I present to you today this wonderful little relic from the 1970s. This is a Casio calculator. You can see the monogram on the case, and made in Japan here. This is a Pocket LC2, specifically known as the CL812, which you can read in very small letters on the back. This is your basic pocket calculator. As you can see, literally, it has just the 4 functions plus percent, and you'll notice it has a memory here. I'll get into a little later. That's a little unusual. So it has a manual power switch. It relies on one AA battery. You'll notice the profile here has a little bit of a hump just to accommodate the battery. Otherwise, it's as thin as it can be with the technology of the time. So if I turn this on, you'll see that the display is a little light. That's kind of fading over the ages, but these particular types of display were never all that. They never had all that great a contrast. This is a second generation LCD display, and one of the reasons you can tell that is because of the yellow filter that's applied to it. This is both to increase contrast and also to filter out UV light, which could harm the display. And if I type in some letters or some numbers, you'll notice that the display takes a little bit of time to act, and it's not especially all that clear. This is a function of these things. And I can tell that there is obviously some problems with the internals of the display itself, because I'm seeing things show up on different levels. So this display has degraded over time, and that's fairly common with these. However, you'll notice that the calculator still works just fine. I get all the results I expect. So this is still a very nice unit, and this was part of Casio's marketing, is that this was a very small unit, a true pocket calculator. This you could slip in your pocket without caring about the weight. As a matter of fact, without the battery, this weighs a whopping 72 grams, or about a bit less than 3 ounces. So this really was a nice little device, and with the single AA disposable cell, would last a fair while before you had to change the battery. And in the day, there were a lot of LED displays, and they were very power hungry. But if you wanted the higher end calculators, that's what you got. When Casio entered the market with things like this, they really made the domestic competitors sit up and take notice. One of the things about Texas Instruments and Hewlett-Packard is that they were more focused on the American market and treating the European market as a secondary market, not really doing a whole lot of direct marketing to Europe, though they did manufacture calculators like Texas Instruments had a facility in Italy. But they did not consider them their primary money market. Casio, on the other hand, immediately went worldwide. So they took advantage of all of their connections and tried to spread their brand as far and wide as they could. So, and because they were in kind of the center of the technology storm at that particular time, with particularly semiconductors, they were able to manufacture things fairly cheaply and iterate very quickly, whereas Texas Instruments and HP would choose a slightly different strategy and try to let a model run its course before they introduced a new one. They were working all the time, but they weren't trying to release new models all the time. Casio, on the other hand, they were trying to beat the speed, feature, and price war with everything they could. This, made in 1976, and only this year, this is the second edition. The first one was 75, the third would be in 77, was probably available for about $15, maybe $20 at the time, whereas the Texas Instruments TI-30, which was also introduced in 1976, it was introduced at $25. HP calculators, the 35 and the 45, were selling for $400. And even the earlier models of Texas Instruments, like the SR10 and SR11, were selling for well over $100. So these were not exactly consumer devices. That's where Casio went for. They tried to do everything they could to make sure that their calculator was in everybody's hands. That meant that by using their global connections, they could produce at high volume and low margin and be able to beat out a lot of the competition. So let's talk about this calculator just a little bit. Now, I'm not going to bother opening this up. It's not that difficult. There's one screw here, and then you have to go around and work the clips out. But one of these already broke with age, and I don't want to risk doing that again. It wasn't my fault. It was already broken, but it came apart when I took the case off. It uses a Toshiba T3333 chip, so that's 4 threes. It has a code of 6E on it, but there's nothing that indicates anything about that particular code. But since this calculator model was only introduced in 1976, I know it was made in 1976. The Toshiba chip is kind of interesting because in that day, a lot of calculators had separate display driver chips to be able to handle the LED or first or second generation LCD screens. And this actually was only Casio's second generation screen. The Pocket LC, the predecessor, the CL810, was the first one to have that feature in it. This used a bit less power than the first generation. The first generation used significantly less power than the LEDs at the time. So this was part of how they were able to get the single AA battery to provide the long battery life. It was because they were using a low power display and a fairly low power chip. This calculator is just straightforward CMOS logic, and that's also different because most calculators at the time were using NMOS logic, which meant that it was working with negative voltage, but there was always some static losses with the chips. This did not have the static losses. That meant that when it wasn't busy doing anything, all it was doing was managing the display. The chip itself was not burning any power beyond that. And CMOS was kind of a revolution at that point. And now this is what everything operates on because it's superior to the PMOS and NMOS that you used before. They do have applications, but rare. Usually it's going to be CMOS. Now, this calculator, as I said, your basic 4 functions, 69 divided by 3 equals 23, times 2, 46, minus 3, plus 5, and everything works exactly the way you expect. So I can also do 6.3 times 6%, if I can get it to type. It will show me that, and then I can hit the plus key and it will add it to it. It's worth mentioning here that this calculator uses immediate execution, sometimes called direct entry or sum of products. So if I do, let's see, 6 plus 3 times 2, I get 18, not 12. So you notice 6 plus 3 times, it's already calculated 6 plus 3. So when I enter the 2, it's multiplying 2 times the result. The same thing applies with division. So if I clear that out and I do 3 plus 6 divided by 2, we'll get 4.5. Because it processed 3 plus 6 first to give me 9 divided by 2. So that's another thing that you have to remember when you're working with a calculator, is that your entry has to be adjusted to take that into account. But as noted, if you're just simply doing sums and basic figures, it's not really going to be that much of a problem. Just remember that if you're doing a multiplication somewhere in there, you should probably do the multiplication first before you do the addition and subtraction. So one of the things that is interesting here is that if I work with negative numbers and I'm still working with the memory, so let's put 69 in the memory here. So clear that out, just verify it's there. Now let's subtract 75 and then hit the equal sign. Now remember, we have 69 in the memory, and if I hit memory recall now, I get 63. That's not right. Because when you combine the operation, what happened was it took the result and added that to the memory. So 69 plus negative 6 is 63. So you have that little oddity. But you don't really need to worry about that too much, because 36, you can just enter it directly, 3, 6, 9. And anytime you hit the equal sign, you're adding the number in. So you can use this as a memory plus and that as a memory minus. 36, 6, 5 plus, 9 plus, 4 minus, and I have negative 32. Now, if I'm doing a multiplication division, 69 times 8 divided by 12.3, subtract that from the memory. 507.1296. And the biggest problems with this display seem to be right around here. And a little spot here. I might attempt to see if I can get this to behave a little bit better, but at most I'll be able to improve it by about 10-15%. It's just age that's doing this. So this calculator is capable of doing pretty much everything you want to do within the limits of those 4 functions plus percent in the memory. But because this is always a memory plus, your working with the memory is a little bit difficult if you're trying to use it to hold a value while you do something else. That's not really going to work too well. If you're going to use the memory on this, you have to kind of plan around it. Now, this was a really good entry by Casio because for $15, given that things like the HP 45 and the 35 were selling for nearly $400, and even the earlier TI entrants, the SR10, SR11, were selling for over 100. I think just about 200 at their introduction, only to be brought down later. The TI 30, which was also introduced in 1976, was a scientific calculator, which was on sale for $25 and sometimes on sale for a little less. The MSRP was $25, $30, I think. This, at $15 or some cases even $10, was perfect for anybody who just needed to do quick sums and figures. Like, say you had a contractor, landscaper, someone working at a bank trying to tally up what a customer had before officially entering it into the system, just as a verification check. Someone doing shopping, trying to keep track of what they're buying, whether the hardware store, grocery store, whatever. This was perfect. This was all you need. And it was legitimately a pocket calculator. With or without the case, it would fit easily in a shirt pocket, a pants pocket, a duffel bag, wherever you needed to put it, wherever you needed to carry it, you could go. So while this may seem like it was almost useless, bear in mind this was 1976. And at that point, if you took 4 people, so a family of 4, out to a decent mid-range restaurant, you might come away with a $12 to $15 bill. So for this to be $15, it's still the price of a meal at a restaurant. So it's not exactly cheap the way we think of it now. But back then, when you compare that to $100 and you take a look at the same meal, okay, well now you're talking maybe a week's wages for somebody to be able to afford that. Whereas this, you sacrifice a little, you put some money in the cookie jar, at the end of the month you take it out and you buy a calculator. So this really was an excellent addition to the calculator sphere at that point. And thanks to people keeping these things around rather than simply throwing them out and being able to preserve them for us, we have this today to examine and explore. And there you have it. Casio Cl 810 Pocket LC2 electronic calculator.